This Family Life News podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you.
Next on the 5 o'clock report.
There hasn't been this much global conflict with these number of countries since World War II.
Very skeptical that we'll find anyone in Iran that wants a deal and has the power to make a deal.
This is not about Blanche. Blanche is negotiating in good faith.
Now, let's go to the newsroom.
Worries about a widening war. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm Mark Webster. It's probably more accurate to start calling it the Middle East War, not just the U.S.-Iran war. Its scope seems to be growing by the day, especially Iran, which, along with its proxies, continues to strike a growing number of its neighbors. Retired Colonel Seth Crumrich tells ABC.
There hasn't been this much global conflict with these number of countries since World War II. And I think people need to step back and take a look at how big of a global conflict that we're currently in right now.
And then there's China, accused of shipping shoulder-launched missile systems capable of downing U.S. aircraft to Iran.
The reported $60 to $70 million purchase, exclusively reported by Reuters, would mark the first direct evidence that Iran was receiving help to rebuild its short-range air defenses after the U.S. and Israel took out its air defenses as part of Epic Fury.
China's response, through a translator:
The relevant reports are inconsistent with the facts and completely groundless.
President Trump said yesterday he'd be surprised if China was supplying Iran with arms, having received assurances they wouldn't. He also hasn't abandoned hope for a negotiated settlement, but many, including fellow Republican Senator Tom Cotton, are highly skeptical.
I've always been very skeptical that we'll find anyone in Iran that wants a deal and has the power to make a deal.
On another global front, Ukraine's president today says they have evidence that Russia has launched at least one North Korean-supplied missile at them. To politics now, Trump says he may temporarily withdraw Todd Blanche's nomination for Attorney General until two Republican holdouts are out of office. In a Truth Social post, Trump said he has no objection to temporarily withdrawing the nomination if Senators John Cornyn and Tom Tillis, quote, don't do the right thing. Says Tillis.
This is not about Blanche. Blanche is negotiating in good faith. We have somebody else in the way, and I don't believe it's the president, and hopefully we can resolve.
Trump's post came after the Senate Judiciary Committee postponed a planned Thursday vote on Blanche's nomination amid Cornyn and Tillis's opposition over Trump's proposed anti-weaponization fund. The father of the Appalachia High School shooter in Georgia receiving a 15-year sentence in prison today. Colin Gray convicted of second-degree murder and several other charges after giving his son, Colt Gray, the gun that was used to kill two students and two teachers at the school in September 2024. The judge telling the father,
the warning lights were flashing brighter and brighter, and you didn't get him help, and you didn't remove his access to the guns.
Colin Gray is the first parent of a school shooter to be convicted of murder. Some health news next. Turns out GLP-1 drugs may help women who have struggled with infertility to get pregnant. Many women are sharing stories online about becoming pregnant after taking GLP-1 medications. And health experts say GLP-1 drugs may improve fertility. The experts say they can help some women by addressing conditions such as obesity and insulin resistance, though results do vary. Well, it's a modern-day tent revival, and organizers say it's shifting America's spiritual landscape.
I can't set you free, but Jesus can.
Dr. Braden Anderson tells CBN it began with a revival event in Indiana several years ago, and that, along with a pastor's urging, moved him and his wife, an ER nurse, to give up their medical practice, sell their house, and take that tent revival nationwide.
People come in underneath that tent that walked in as atheists, walked in as Buddhists, walked in as Muslim. The thought of being able to impact people with the gospel, even in that very moment, just seemed so much more important than the clinics that we had, the work that we did in the emergency room, or what have you. While I'm thankful for that work, this makes a difference in eternity.
Since hitting the road, the traveling tent revival has been marked by overflow crowds and spontaneous baptisms. He says it's clear to him that America is hungry for answers that only the great physician, Jesus, can provide, and says the revival tent is a greater version of a medical emergency room.
We will reflect on this all the time, but when we go home at night now, the stories that you hear of lives that are changed is so much more significant and so much faster than we could have ever achieved through medicine. It is very fulfilling.
Dr. Anderson says as demand continues to outpace capacity, the Jesus Tent Revival is expanding across the border, with meetings now planned in Canada as well. You can learn more about it at JesusTentRevival.com. Still to come here on the 5 o'clock report on Family Life, a recap of our top regional stories, highlights from today's Faith Under Fire. We'll have an update on Chinese persecution of Christian pastors there, and a fish story out of Canada you have to smell to believe. All coming up after Weather with Kevin.
I'm Kevin Williams, and here is your Family Life regional weather forecast. We've had some rather unsettled weather, to say the least, this week, but things are settling down now. Higher pressure is building in, giving the boot to the area of low pressure that's brought recent rain. The result will be a nice end to the work week and a nice start to the weekend, but that won't hold. A front arriving over the weekend will return showers and rumbles. Our call for tonight, still some evening cloudiness on the I-81 corridor with a stray shower, but it becomes moonlit across the board. Low temps, generally 50s and lower 60s. Again, it's a nice day tomorrow, plenty of sunshine, pleasantly warm, high temps around 80. On Saturday, partial sun and warm, highs in the 80s with showers and thunder from Saturday night and Sunday.
All right, thank you, Kevin. Now checking the stories making news where you live across New York and Pennsylvania. The federal trial for the top supermarket mass shooting case is about to move forward. Peyton Gendron's federal trial for the shooting in Buffalo set to begin with jury selection on October 13th, potentially delaying testimony until December. Gendron already pled guilty to state charges with life sentences for the shooting deaths of 10 people at that Buffalo store in 2022. Two more sheriff's offices are refusing to comply with New York Governor Kathy Hochul's Local Cops, Local Crimes Act, New York's new anti-ICE law. Both the Niagara and Cattaraugus County sheriff's offices, along with the Village of Allegheny Police Department, have not complied. Niagara County Sheriff Michael Felicetti says it's a misdirected public safety policy. WGRZ here quoting his statement.
Niagara County Sheriff Michael Felicetti calls it a, quote, misdirected public safety policy. He went on to say, as a border county working with federal partners is critical to public safety.
The law requires agencies to end certain agreements with federal immigration authorities or face possible legal action. There are now a dozen agencies statewide that have failed to terminate those agreements, including Broome County. A pair of area casinos may be going on the market. Get the story from Family Life's Sarah Harnish.
Yeah, Del Lago Resort and Casino in Seneca County, New York, and Presque Isle Downs and Casino in Erie, Pennsylvania, are two of 9 such facilities where their owner, Churchill Downs Incorporated, is considering possibly selling. The company controls several such properties around the country and has informed federal regulators they're exploring selling at least some of them following a review of Churchill's portfolio of holdings. The company stresses it's uncertain whether any of the facilities will be sold. Over 1,000 people work at Del Lago, around 600 at Presque Isle, making both of them significant employers in their region. Sarah Harnish, Family Life News.
Thank you, Sarah. Some lawmakers plan to keep pushing for Pennsylvania to raise its minimum wage. State Senator Christine Tartaglione said this at the end of the session immediately after lawmakers passed this year's budget without a wage increase.
It's been 7,309 days since Pennsylvania last raised the minimum wage.
The budget passed without the increase despite a proposal passed by the House to gradually raise it up to $15 an hour by 2029.
This year marked 20 years since Pennsylvania last raised the minimum wage. 20 years of rising rent, rising grocery bills, rising utility costs, rising health care expenses.
Tartaglione says she will keep proposing a hike until the Senate passes one. President Trump has tapped the Pennsylvania agriculture leader for a state job aimed at advancing the America First agenda. Chris Hoffman, the former president of the Pennsylvania Farm Bureau, will be the new USDA Rural Development State Director for PA. The agency says Hoffman's role will be to boost job creation, economic development, housing opportunities, opportunities and infrastructure. Up next, highlights from today's Faith Under Fire feature. Our Sarah Harnish speaks with Voice of the Martyrs Vice President Todd Nettleton, who's been tracking the case of Pastor Ezra Jin, free and back on U.S. soil after 9 months in a Chinese communist detention center, even as 8 other church leaders remain imprisoned.
Missionaries in China just ran a victory lap after the release of Pastor Ezra Jin, who is imprisoned for nearly 9 months for preaching the gospel and refusing to let the Communist Party in China control his church. Todd, tell me what happened.
Well, this is really a praise the Lord story. Pastor Ezra Jin was released from prison, actually arrived in Los Angeles. His family, his wife and children have already been in the United States, and he arrived in Los Angeles on the morning of July 4th, Independence Day. So, like I say, a huge praise the Lord. Lots of people had prayed for him. It is also a success story for the Trump administration. President Trump specifically raised Pastor Ezra Jin's case when he was with President Xi in Beijing just about a month and a half ago. And so at that time, President Xi said, hey, I'll look into that. Now this pastor is free and allowed to leave China. So a big win. That's all the good news. The bad news is there are still 8 leaders from Pastor Ezra Jin's Zion Church who are in prison in China. All of them have now been charged with fraud and illegal business practices. This follows the pattern we've seen in China over the last 2+ years. Church leaders are not charged with holding illegal religious gatherings. They are not charged with anything related to religion. They're charged with fraud and illegal business practices. And 2 things about that. Number one, it allows the Chinese government to hide what they're doing, because if you or I call the Chinese embassy and say, hey, why are you persecuting these pastors? They will say, oh, no, this has nothing to do with religion. We're protecting consumers. We're cracking down on fraud. You wouldn't want us to allow fraud of our people, would you? And so they're hiding persecution. The other side of the coin, which is also equally nefarious, is it is very difficult for these brothers and sisters to defend themselves in court, because what happens is the government says, well, you were collecting donations for a charity that doesn't exist. And they say, no, we were taking an offering in our church. And they say, well, what church? Show us your paperwork. Show us your bank account. What church are you even talking about? And because the church is not allowed to register, it is not allowed to have a checking account, it is not allowed to legally exist, the government can just keep saying, hey, you were taking donations for a church that doesn't even exist. That's the very definition of fraud. So it is very difficult for these pastors to defend themselves against these charges. And it is very easy for the Chinese government to say, no, we're not persecuting anybody. This is all about financial crime. It has nothing to do with religion.
Our Sarah Harnish with Todd Nettleton from Voice of the Martyrs on today's Faith Under Fire. You can hear the entire feature and all of our Family Life original news features at Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, and FamilyLife.org. This is the 5 o'clock report on Family Life.
What would you choose, $1 million today or a penny doubled every day for 30 days? Hi, I'm Rob West with the Faith and Finance Minute. At first, the penny sounds almost laughable. After 5 days, it's worth 16 cents. But by day 30, that penny grows to more than $5.3 million. That's the power of compounding. It starts small, but over time, growth builds on growth. The same principle applies to investing. When your money earns a return and that return begins earning more, time becomes one of your greatest financial tools. Proverbs 13:11 says, wealth gained hastily will dwindle, but whoever gathers little by little will increase it. The lesson? Don't chase quick riches. Start early, stay consistent, and let time do its work. Get biblical answers to your financial questions in the Faith Fi community. Download Faith Fi, Faith and Finance in your app store or visit faithfi.com.
Thank you, Rob. Finally at 5, to say they're breathing a sigh of relief in little St. Mary's, Newfoundland would be a gross understatement, because what they've been smelling for the past 20 years is just gross.
They said an animal won't live near that, and no rat or no cat will go around it.
What could be that gross? fish sauce, or in this case, 110 3,000-gallon tanks of fermenting fish sauce sitting inside of a fish sauce plant that was abandoned 20 years ago. It was always bad, but when a storm blew a wall out, well, even Jonah never smelled anything this fishy. Volunteer Mayor Steve Ryan tells the CBC.
Well, it was pretty contained until the walls blew down in the building back in a storm there in the winter. And now what our way to prevailing winds is, different parts of the town do really get a really heavy smell. It's hard to describe. Something you never smelled before.
After years of begging the Ontario government to help make it go away, cleanup crews have begun the unenviable months-long task of draining those tanks, mixing the rancid sauce with peat moss, then sucking the messy mix up into vac trucks and transporting it to a landfill, all at a cost of over $1 million, though anyone living near it will tell you worth every penny. And that's the world we live in for Thursday, July 30th, 2026. Thank you again for joining us. I'm Mark Webster, Family Life News.
Thank you for listening to this Family Life News podcast. If you've been encouraged by what you've heard, please share it with others and click the subscribe button to automatically receive future episodes. Family Life is a listener-supported ministry. Podcasts like this are made possible by your financial partnership. Find out more at familylife.org.